Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here, and Switch is here as well. Hello, we are doing a speedrun version of a full card review for everything that's coming out, all the Death Knight stuff, and also the stuff from new expansion. Right now we're going through all the Death Knight stuff. This is going to be one video, and there's going to be another video, which is just everything else. So with that, let's just get right into just the mechanics of Death Knight first, because this will hopefully make some of the later stuff make a little bit more sense. So Death Knight, if you did not know, is the new class being added to Hearthstone. And every class has a hero power. Their hero power is Ghoul Charge, a very good hero power for Arena. It's 2 mana, summon a 1/1 undead with charge, and it dies at the end of turn. So it's kind of like a mage hero power, but it can be blocked by taunt, but otherwise it's pretty much the same. But also it interacts with the new mechanic in Death Knight, which is corpses. So corpses is basically, there are ways to gain corpses, but in addition, anytime any minion dies, unless it says it doesn't give you corpses, which certain Death Knight cards do, generally speaking, when a card dies, you get a corpse. And these corpses are consumed by some of the Death Knight cards. Then you just get bonus effects or just general effects from the cards based off of the corpses you use, okay? And then the last thing to mention is that there is a new deck building mechanic called runes. There are 3 types of runes: the blood rune, the frost rune, and the unholy rune. And these are basically within the class an additional restriction on what you can actually put in your deck. And the question has often been asked, how does this work in Arena? It works basically the same way it does in Constructed. You can have 3 total runes. You could go all 3 into blood runes. That'll unlock very specific blood rune cards, such as, this one, which has 3 of them there. So you can only do this if you go triple blood rune, which I would not recommend doing in Arena. I don't think that's going to be very good. But yeah, you can have up to 3, and since you get cards in the draft generally, you start out with none of your rune slots being taken. But then as soon as, for example, if you do take a triple rune card, then you're done. That's what you're stuck with. So that actually will be something that you probably want to keep in mind a little bit in the draft, is that to actually keep that stuff open. I think you're going to want to go a little bit wider, like maybe go like 2 frost, 1 undead, 2 undead, 1 frost, or 1 of each or something. I think that's going to be the idea you're going to want to do in Arena, but we'll have to see when it actually goes, because the 3 different types, the blood rune's kind of like the control deck version. It has cards that they say are manipulating life totals, tanky, stuff that's kind of more constructed-y, not really stuff that works in Arena, but there are some very good single blood cards, so that'll be a thing. But also frost rune, frost does frost things, they freeze things, they have a lot of really good things that do translate really well to Arena, so frost is going to be pretty good. And unholy basically has a whole bunch of ways to generate like minions, which helps you get corpses, which just helps all the other stuff work in Death Knight, and as well it's just putting stuff on the board is really good in Arena as well. So I think Unholy and Frost are going to be very good for Arena. So with that, let's get into all the cards. We're going to go through all 68 of the new Death Knight cards in a row, and yeah, we're just going to go right down by mana cost, because I could try to go down by type, but it's just going to be too difficult. We are speedrunning, as we mentioned, so let's just get right into it. And because we're going really fast, I'm not even gonna like try to say too much as far as like comparing how good cards are. I'm just gonna say whether I think they're good or not good, pretty much. Maybe like a thumbs up, sideways, thumbs down type thing. It's not gonna be, we're not getting into really granular things for these cards. So with that, let's get right into it. First one, Horn of Winter. This is a 2 rune frost spell. 0 mana, refresh 2 mana crystals. It's not generally, this kind of stuff isn't very good. If it was like, 0 mana, just gain 2 mana, it would be a lot better. As is, this doesn't let you go above your maximum mana for the turn, so it's not like completely unpickable, but generally speaking, this is just not really the kind of stuff you want in Arena, so not a great card. Moving on, we are going to Body Bagger. This is a card that actually, there are some cards that don't have any runes attached to them at all, so all Death Knight cards can get this, and this is one of them. 1 mana, 1/3, undead, battle cry, gain a corpse. So, as we mentioned, all minions, when they die, actually give you a corpse, so this actually gives you a total of 2 corpses. So, you know, it just gives a nice boost to a lot of the other Death Knight cards, and a 1-mana 1/3 is totally fine as is. It's a nice thing. Corpses are going to have value. Specifically, corpses are going to have value early, because I don't think Death Knights are going to have a lot of trouble actually having corpses later on, but it's going to be like in the early to mid game that you just haven't acquired them yet. So having something like this is going to be nice. So it basically is just a very good 1-drop. It's not crazy, but it's a good 1-drop, so you'll be picking it a decent amount. Moving on, next is Bonebreaker. This is a 1-mana 2/2 weapon with a single frost rune attached to it. After your hero attacks a minion, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So basically, whether or not you hit face, it always hits face. Kind of cool, right? It doesn't double up, like it's not 8 face damage if you swing face with it, right? But it's always 4 face damage, and a 1-mana 2/2 weapon, generally speaking, is already very good. So 1-mana 2/2 weapon that also just removes 4 health from an enemy hero. Very, very good. So, very nice card here. Be a good reason to just have a Frost Rune spot available just to be able to get that. Moving on, Art Strike. This is a Blood Rune card, single Blood Rune, 1 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion. If that kills it, gain a corpse. So 1 mana, deal 3. Pretty good. Gaining a corpse is something, right? It's an additional bonus. If it was just 1 mana, deal 3 to a minion, right? You know, Holy Smite, that's literally Holy Smite. Holy Smite's already a good card. Adding a corpse, I don't think adds that much to it, but it's something. But mostly this is just 1 mana, deal 3, and it's pretty nice, so decent card, decent card. Moving on to Icy Touch, 1 mana frost spell, deal 2 damage to an enemy and freeze it. So basically this is just a slightly cheaper, but it's a cheaper Frostbolt that does 1 less damage. Frostbolt is a very, very good card, or would be if it actually existed right now, which it hasn't for a while. I wonder if that one's going to come back the next Core Set rotation, but yeah, I mean, this is just good, right? Is this better than 1 mana deal 3? Hard to say, actually. But it's probably about the same, honestly. It's just, a lot of times it'll do the same thing, and sometimes, you know, a freeze is going to be really important, right? Yeah, it's also just like a better Frost Shock. That's true, and Frost Shock wasn't terrible, but yeah, this is just, you know, it's just good. You'll pick a decent amount, and also, it's funny that they must have just ran out of space in the Frost Runes, because even though there's a Frost spell, it doesn't actually have a Frost Rune attached to it, so all Demon Hunters, all Death Knights actually get to draft this, so that'll be a thing to keep in mind. Moving on, we have Noxious Cadaver. This is a single Blood Rune. 1 mana 1/2, Battle Cry. Deal 2 damage to an enemy and your hero. So it does say enemy. It can just hit the opponent's face if you want it to. It's an undead, and there is significant value, by the way, to undead minions. There's just a lot of undead synergy. And especially with the offering bonus, that typically comes with new sets. All undeads get a bit of a bonus, keep in mind, but that's probably not super relevant for this particular one, but keep that in mind for future undeads. But yeah, 1 mana 1/2, deal 2. You don't really care a lot of the time about dealing 2 to your heroes, so it's very, very good. And I know even in, like, I saw other constructor reviews where they even said, like, this was the best 1-drop ever, probably. It might be. It's very good. Moving on, we have Plagued Grain. This is a triple Unholy Rune card. 1 mana, gain 4 corpses. So basically, honestly, essentially, that means you're going to be done, basically, even having to worry about it. But it also shuffles 4 crates into your deck that summon a 2/2 undead when drawn. So, you know, you'll just randomly get like a 2/2, and then that's even more. When you do get that, that's just even more corpses. So it's going to be a very frustrating thing to play against, because sometimes, you know, if your opponent plays on turn 1, sometimes it'll do absolutely nothing, and then sometimes it'll be they'll draw all 3 of them immediately, and then you'll lose. But most of the time, probably not very good, because it's not going to be great as a curve play, just because, you know, you probably expect to not even get one until like turn 3 or 4 turns later on average, even, and then, you know, you're kind of just not doing anything for turn 1, so probably not a card you want to prioritize, and especially given that this is a triple rune card, you're probably just not going to be picking this very much. I would say it probably is good if you happen to have it on one. Just, yeah, you wouldn't want to prioritize it because, yeah, later on it does literally nothing, because I think the corpses aren't going to really have any value, and then it does nothing. But yeah, if you can get it very early, it is good, I think, but you probably just aren't going to want to prioritize it super high. Yeah, and as I mentioned as well, I think locking yourself into triple anything, triple Unholy might be the best one. Actually, triple Frost might be better, but I don't think you want to lock yourself into triple anything unless you get something absolutely insane for it, so that's the other reason. Anyway, moving on to Rune Forging. 1 mana shadow spell, draw a weapon, spend a corpse to reduce its cost by 1. So, honestly, not the greatest way to spend a corpse, I would think. But, you know, if it's a 0 mana draw, very nice. You get to draw weapons. There are a handful of Death Knight weapons. That's pretty cool. The issue with this card, of course, is that, you know, you probably will because of the lower card pool pretty often, especially if you have one of the rune types that actually has weapons. I believe it's Frost that has the most weapons. But, you know, the caution with a card like this is that you might just not have weapons. You're just not guaranteed to have weapons, and then this does absolutely nothing, right? But if you have, even if you have one weapon, you might draw the weapon first, and then this does nothing, right? So it's a little bit of a sketchy draft pick for that reason. But, you know, if you think it'll be active, then you'll pick it over anything that's mediocre. Moving on to Skeletal Sidekick. This is a 1 mana 1/2 undead. Battle cry, give a friendly undead +2 attack. This has no runes attached to it as well. So yeah, this is one of those things where if you have an undead that you can activate this on, it's very good. It's a little bit conditional, honestly. It's worth keeping in mind, like, you know, you compare this to Abusive Sergeant, you get an extra stat. But the nice thing is that this is a permanent +2 attack buff. It's not just like an Abusive Sergeant. So you can just, you know, put this on a mini and go face with it, and then it's pretty nice, especially if you can hit something. And that is true. You actually can use this with hero power, so that's always a way to activate it. You can't get a permanent buff because it'll always die. But yeah, you can use this to turn your hero power into deal 3, which is very good. So 3 mana, deal 3, get a 1/2 is always an option. So that makes it pretty consistent. So yeah, for that reason, I think it's a decent card. Probably, I can't imagine you have so many undeads that this is like just super not, because you know, the condition of it being undead is real. So I think that's going to limit it a bit, but it's the fact you can always use it with the hero power makes it decent. So you'll always be willing to take it. And it's worth, and when you do that, you get the corpse from the you get 2 corpses from doing that. You get the corpse from the hero power and the corpse from this minion. So that's actually pretty good. Yeah, you know, yeah, it's all right. I'm sold. It's like a 4 out of 5. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's move on to Ymirjar Frostbreaker. This is a single frost rune, 1 mana 1/2. Battle cry, gain +1 attack for each frost spell in your hand. So, I mean, you're not gonna, I mean, even if you go triple frost, you're probably just not gonna have that many frost spells in your hand, especially on turn 1. Let's be honest. So you're lucky if you get a 1 mana 2/2 out of this. Having said that, I mean, you know, just a serviceable 1-drop isn't always that bad, but yeah, you're probably not gonna, you know, you're not gonna have much hope for this. If it gained like health or something, then maybe it would be worth dreaming for it. But like, I mean, even if you pop off, what you're getting a 3/2 or something, you know, it's okay. But in that case, but yeah, so probably not super good. Moving on, it would be only like if you happen to go like triple frost, then you might look at this a bit higher. But most of the time, you're just like, yeah, it's not really gonna work. Moving on to Battlefield Necromancer, a 2 mana 2/3 with double Unholy Rune. At the end of your turn, raise a corpse as a 1/2 risen footman with taunt. So one thing that's worth mentioning is that a lot of these things are actually forced. Like there could be possible times if you don't have a lot of corpses that you might not want to do this just to get like a 1/2 or something. You might have better things you want to do, and then you might not be super happy about it. But I don't know. That's probably not going to happen too often. So by the way, a lot of these cards that summon the that spend a corpse and give you a minion, these are the cards that give you minions that don't leave you a corpse. So these are not free, they actually do consume it. That's kind of why I bring that up. But yeah. Anyway, the point is, so I mean, this is a serviceable 2-drop, is a 2-mana 2/3. And if you play, like, for example, the 1-drop to get a corpse immediately on turn 1, then you can get this on turn 2, and then you're just getting a lot of tempo based off of that, just having a good 1-drop, 2-drop, and a free 1/2. Like, that's actually pretty significant. That's gonna put you pretty far ahead. But most of the time, not gonna be. I mean, honestly, it's pretty damn good, because just the tempo of that. It's just the limiting thing of it is that you're just not gonna have a corpse on turn 2. So this isn't all this. Otherwise, like, this would just be a 3-drop on turn 2 all the time, but you're probably not gonna have a corpse on turn 2. So that restricts it a little bit. But it's a persistent and a turn effect, so you can play it on turn 2, and then if you hero power on turn 3 or do anything else, then you will have a corpse, and then you get to continue chaining value. So it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. So, pretty good minion, but not super crazy. Moving on to Blood Tap. This is a double Blood Rune card. 2-mana spell, give all minions, shadow spell, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. Spend 3 corpses to give them +1/+1 more. I don't know about this, because 1 mana 1/1 hand buff is like a pretty good card. 2 mana 1/1 hand buff is not a very good card. And spending 3 corpses to give him +1/+1 more. That could be good. Theoretically, right? That's really what you want to be doing. You're not really going to want to play this on turn 2. I mean, you can, kind of. It's a little bit weird. Because, yeah, it's kind of like conditioning, right? You would play it. Well, actually, yeah. It does compare a lot to conditioning. What you do with conditioning is you play it on turn 5, right? This card also, you just have to spend it. You have to do it probably again around turn 5. You might get to do it on turn 4. Just 3 corpses might actually be easier to do than this. Yeah. You absolutely are not going to want to play it just on 2 mana, though. You're going to want to play it with the corpse boost. This is where I kind of mentioned where it's like, well, if you spend your corpses just to get 1/2s or something, you might be really sad to not have your corpses for this. So yeah, you are going to absolutely want to use it with the boost. And then in that case, it's pretty good, but you have to play around it, right? The same way you would use conditioning. So that seems good. Because, I mean, conditioning's one of the best cards, like, Warrior has had, actually, if you know how to use it. And this would be the same, so yeah, that makes this actually very good. But yeah, this is not a turn 2 play. You play this in the mid game. You try to increase your hand size and stuff. And potentially even hero power just to get the corpses, just to get more buffs, right? So yeah, there's some potential there. But you're going to want to use it intelligently. You don't just rip it on 2 almost ever. Moving on to Bone Digger Geist. 2 mana 2/2 undead, battle cry. Spend a corpse to gain +1/+2. So if you happen to have a corpse on turn 2, this is just a 2 mana 3/4. Pretty nuts, right? You're not really going to want to play this. I mean, you can, but you can play a 2/2, but you probably want to play this with the corpse to get the extra stats. This has a single unholy rune attached to it. And also, I mean, worth mentioning, you get the corpse back, right? Since you're playing the minion. You spend the corpse, so you will eventually get it back. So overall, pretty nice to get an overstad 2-drop. Just a little bit awkward that you can't actually a lot of times you won't actually be able to play it active on 2. But, you know, you can imagine in the same way that you would play Totem Golem, for example, and then be overloaded for mana, you could do it the exact same way, kind of, by just playing another minion and then playing this as a 3-drop as well, I guess, right? Because it would be it effectively works as a 3-drop because it is a 3/4. So, you know, it should usually be pretty good. And yeah, as you mentioned, if you wanted to, you could actually, on coin, you could coin Hero Power and then play this on turn 2 as a 3/4, so it could be a thing. If you see people do that, you probably know what's up. Moving on to Dark Transformation, another single Unholy Rune card. 2 mana shadow spell, transform an undead into a 4/5 undead monstrosity with Rush. So you're going to have a pretty good number of undeads. You can actually use this with your hero power as well, which probably is going to be the way you're just going to want to do this for the most part, honestly, right? With hero power, this is just... And correct me if I'm wrong, but your hero power dies at end of turn, right? So you can actually just charge their face and then just turn it into a 4/5. So get a face damage and then also just get a 4/5 rush. So yeah, that's just unbelievably strong. Not like unbelievably strong, it's not like the most broken thing ever, but yeah, it's a very, very good card. Nearly auto pick, I think, because that just seems very good. There's a lot of these single rune cards that are just very good, and there are going to be reasons why you want to have like a rune available just to be able to have these kind of things in the card pool. So yeah, this is just a very, very good card. Moving on to Death Chiller, 2 mana 2/3 elemental with 2 frost runes. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to 2 random enemies. So it's basically like a little mini Flame Waker kind of. Better stats per cost than Flame Waker, cheaper than Flame Waker, makes it easy to combo, kind of nice. But yeah. Having said that, in Arena, you just don't tend to have that many spells. I do think Frost is pretty pretty spell heavy, so you probably will have a bit more than a normal deck, but, you know, you probably don't expect too much from the effect of this. Having said that, it's already a 2 mana 2/3 elemental. Sometimes they'll have value as well. So it's really no downside. It's just it's a 2-drop with situational upside, but pretty good situational upside. So, you know, pretty good card. Moving on, we have Defrost. This is a 2 mana frost spell, the single frost rune. Draw a card, spend 2 corpses to draw another. So it's going to be a reason that you want to have a lot of corpses. 2 mana draw 2 honestly isn't actually that good in Arena, just because tempo tends to be so important, but it's totally pickable, right? It's not necessarily how you want to spend your corpses, especially not in the mid game, but, you know, by the time you actually want to be spending mana drawing cards, you probably have unlimited corpses because you've just played a bunch of neutral minions, right? Because that's how Arena works. So by the time you actually want to play this, the corpses is going to be nothing. So I think it's just 2 mana draw 2 pretty much, so pretty good. If you really wanted to, you could just cycle it on turn 2 as well if you had nothing else to do. But, you know, you might want to instead hero power nothing just to get a corpse, because that might actually be better. So yeah, so it seems, you know, it's pretty much just 2 mana draw 2, which is pretty good. And if you want to be playing value oriented at all, nice to have some card draw. Nice to have card draw in period. Just in general, but yeah. Seems like a decent card. Moving on to Frost Strike, 2 mana frost spell with 2 frost runes. Deal 3 damage to a minion. If that kills it, discover a frost rune card. I believe each all 3 of the, we'll probably see them soon, all 3 of the rune types have cards like this that discover, but they cost you 2 runes, so you can only do 1 of them. But I believe that no matter what your runes are, you can always discover anything. So that means you can have 2 frost, 1 unholy, And then you can actually still discover a triple Frost Rune card from this. And there's one particular very good triple Frost Rune card, which costs 7 mana. But yeah. In any case, 2 mana deal 3 to a minion is pretty good. Not great, but discovering in general is very, very good. There are some bad Frost Rune cards. It's discover a card as well. It's not just discover a spell. But it's worth saying because there are some bad Frost Rune cards. But you're almost always going to get something at least decent, and sometimes you'll get something very good. So all of these discovers should be just very good cards. Alright, moving on to Harbinger of Winter. This is a 2 mana 2/2 undead, death rattle, draw a frost spell. So you need to have frost spells for this to actually work. If you do, 2 mana 2/2 draw a spell is usually good because spells tend to be some of the best cards in your deck that you want to draw. So that effect is very good. It is on a death rattle, unfortunately, which means you can't use the other guy to transform it. It could get silenced, you know, all that stuff. It is on a delay, but very nice if you have some premium frost spells to pull them out. So overall, should be pretty good, assuming you can actually activate it. But since you have to have locked in 2 frost runes for this, you probably will have some form of activation, but it's not guaranteed. But that makes it seem pretty decent. Moving on to Hematurge. This is a 2 mana 2/3 with 2 blood runes. Battle cry. Spend a corpse to discover a blood rune card. So, as I said, like all of the discovers should be very, very good. This one is slightly awkward in the sense that, again, you probably don't have a corpse on curve on turn 2. So you may have to wait to actually play this, or you have to just play it as a river croc. But yeah, having the ability to discover blood rune cards, discover anything, is going to be very good. So, you know, 2-drop with very significant upside. Next up we have Necrotic Mortician. This is the unholy one, double unholy, 2 mana 2/3. If a friendly undead died after your last turn, discover an unholy rune card. So that it says after your last turn. There's certain cards that actually say since your last turn, right? Or maybe that's not true. But anyway, that means it could be during your opponent's turn. If you had an undead minion and your opponent killed it during their turn, this is active. But also, you could just, for example, hero power and then trade it off, and then an undead died. So now this is active. So now you can play this. So you can, on turn 4, always, well, I guess you need your opponent to actually have a minion on board. But assuming your opponent has a minion on board, then you can always activate this starting on turn 4, no matter what. So that makes it pretty good. Since that you don't have to worry about it, it just might be a little bit awkward curve-wise if you're forcing yourself to hero power and you wouldn't actually want to. But you'll always be able to get the value, and you can always just play this as a 2-drop as well. So makes it, at the very least, a very decent card. Potentially very good, because, again, Discover is OP. Next up, we have Obliterate. This is a 2 mana epic spell. Single blood rune. Destroy a minion. Your hero takes damage equal to its health. Where was this? Because this was in the game. Was this like, this was in like single player or something? Or this was this one of the Death Knight cards older from like Lich King or something? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was from Lich King. Yeah, so this was in the game before, but yeah, 2 mana, destroy a minion, very, very good. Your hero takes damage equal to its health. It's also the same effect as that Warlock card, right? The 6-drop, which was very, very good. It's probably a weaker card because that thing also gave you a 6 mana 7/5. But yeah. Anyway, it's usually worth taking a lot of damage to get a huge tempo swing, assuming it's not going to immediately kill you. So yeah, very good card. Just you know, maybe not something you want to draft 5 of, but you're not going to be able to anyway because it's an epic. So It's not like they would ever bring back the epic bug, right? Moving on, we have Plague Strike. This is 2 mana, single unholy rune. Deal shadow spell, deal 3 damage to a minion. If that kills it, summon a 2/2 zombie with Rush. So, yeah. This one, the other one was better, right? Because it gave you a discover, right? This one's very good. The zombie with Rush, I do believe, actually gives you a, it's an undead, and it also gives you a, corpse, so that's very nice. But I mean, having said that, like, it's a little bit weird because you can't just deal 5 damage to a single minion. That doesn't work. But, you know, getting basically a little mini multi-shot out of this is, you know, pretty nice. So I think that is pretty good. Let me move you guys a little bit. For some reason I thought the other thing would be there. Okay, let's. Moving on, we have Vampiric Blood. This is a 2 mana triple blood rune card. Give your hero +5 health. Spend 3 corpses to gain 5 more and draw a card. So, if you 60 health arena decks, you mean 100 health arena decks. This is kind of a constructed card because, you know, the idea of the whole blood thing in constructed is to just be kind of unkillable and just destroy all the aggro decks. And I see we have a raid from Save File. Appreciate you coming in. Welcome everyone. We are doing a speedrun card review, so we're not really we're not doing too much of the chat interaction. But I have to acknowledge the raid, so appreciate it, Save File. But we are about halfway through all the, probably not even halfway through the Death Knight cards. We're like a third of the way through. We're going through all the Death Knight cards right now. So anyway, what I was trying to say was, you know, you give your hero like 20 extra health, well 30 extra health because you also play Renethal, right? So then you just have no ability to die. But that whole thing doesn't really work in Arena. 2 mana, gain 10 health, and draw a card is, I mean, good, right? But you have to lock yourself into the triple blood runes to do this, which just doesn't seem very worth it. And also this card is completely trash if you don't actually cycle it. So, you know, it's not like you wouldn't want this card, but I definitely wouldn't recommend drafting this to lock yourself into triple blood rune through all the cards. Now we are trying to speed run, but we are not quite going that fast. But with that, let's move on to Vicious Bloodworm. This is a 2 mana 3/2 beast with a single blood rune. Battle cry, give a minion your hand, attack equal to this minion's attack. Okay, well, I mean, I don't know how much an attack hand buff is really worth, to be honest, but yeah, a 2 mana 3/2 is already serviceable, right? There might be some value to a beast as well, probably not much, but could be something. But yeah, the 3/2 +3, it's really weird because you just don't know what it's going to land on, and a lot of things it's just not really going to matter, you would think. So, it's okay because it's 2 mana 3/2. 2 mana 3/2s haven't been good lately because it's so easy to clean them up. But there's so many ways to deal with 3 damage now that I don't know that a 2/3 is even going to be better. So, you know, it's fine. It's a 2-drop. You'll pick it. It lets you, it's only a single rune, so it's no downside there. Now let's move on. Acolyte of Death. This is a single frost rune card. After a friendly undead dies, draw a card. So as we mentioned many times, this works with your hero power. Your hero power does summon an undead. You're going to have a decent number of undead. There's a lot of good undead minions. A lot of them are early game minions that you can curve into this. And if this sticks, you know, it's a persistent threat because you can keep hero powering and keep drawing more and just you will win, basically, if this thing stays alive. So it is completely terrifying for your opponents. This card is extremely, extremely good. And as mentioned, yeah, Frozen Throne, I believe, has a lot of undeads, right? So that also just makes this better. So yeah, you're gonna draw like 1 card per turn that this is alive, basically, at least. So yeah, it's just very good. Especially if you can combine this with Unholy as well, you can get way more. too. So yeah, there's a lot of value potential there. Very, very strong. Moving on, we have Anti-Magic Shell. This was also one of the old Lich King cards. Although, did they, no, this is the original version, right? I don't think they changed this one. Or was the original one like +2/+2, 5 mana or something like that? I think maybe this one was changed. But anyway. 3 mana, single Unholy Rune. Give your minions +1/+1. It was a 4 mana 2/2, okay. Give your minions +1/+1 and can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. So honestly, that seems worse than 4 mana +2/+2, right? Sometimes, I mean, you might be willing to just put this on a single minion, just to like, if you just happen to have a 10/10 on the board, then maybe you just want to make it can't be targeted really bad. But yeah, it's just, you're not getting a lot of stats out of this, so unless you're really getting value that can't be targeted, this isn't worth it. You do have a lot of spreads, so like, hey, you might be willing to pay for an overpriced AoE buff. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's overpriced, right? Like this. Just not really worth it, because it doesn't help you against AoEs. You want to play this on a really wide board, and that doesn't help you against AoEs. So it's just a little bit weird, right? So probably not great, but not, you know, not the worst thing ever. Alright, moving on. Hold up. We have Asphyxiate. 3 mana shadow spell. Double blood rune. Destroy the highest attack enemy minion. So, you know, highest attack enemy minion, usually the minion you'd want to remove, right? But not always. If your opponent has a 4/12 and a Magma Rager, people laughed at Magma Rager, well, then this would be absolutely no problem, because you would just hero power the Magma Rager. Okay, if they have an Ice Rager, you might have a problem, right? But you know, so there is like some real potential awkwardness to that, but yeah, as you mentioned, there's some upside, because it can remove, for example, an immune RBO or something, so it has some upside as well. But yeah, generally speaking, it's usually not going to be that awkward, and then you just get a 3 mana Assassinate, so, you know, very nice. Very nice. You'll want this. And even though I'm not a super big fan of the blood runes, like this might be a reason you'd be willing to take 2 blood runes. I still wouldn't recommend 3, I think, but you know, if you can get something like this, you probably would go ahead and do it, right? Alright, moving on. We have Blightbang. Why is this a card, is the question. 3 mana 3/3 beast with a single unholy. Battlecry, infect all enemy minions. When they die, you summon a 2/2 zombie with taunts. So it's nice to see you were winning against me, sir. It would be a shame if you just weren't winning anymore. Oh yeah, Wailing Soul is going to be in the game, so you can counter that with this. You're not going to think about this because it's a legendary, but yeah, when you, this is going to be very frustrating for me, because, you know, I like to put a lot of minions on board, and then this is like a 3 mana 11/11 or something. Yeah, and there's going to be ways, most of the time you probably will see it generated off of something. You could see it generated in other classes, right, when they can create random beast. Yeah, so this being in the game is a thing, but yeah, okay. I mean, I hate it. What do you want me to say? That's all I know. It's very strong. Alright, moving on. Another card that's very strong. Chillfallen Baron. 3 mana 2/2 undead, Battlecry, and Death Rattle. Draw a card. So I see you had I see you liked Arcane Intellect. Let's just give you a corpse, a 2/2, along with it. Pretty good. Let's move on. No, but like, you know, you'll always get 3 mana 2/2 draw a card, even if they silence it or something. You have Battlecry value, Death Rattle value, Undead value. There's a lot of additional value to this as well, other than just being an Arcane Intellect that also gives you a 2/2. It's very, very strong. But yeah, you wouldn't necessarily, yeah, it's a D-tempo play on turn 3 still, but you know, at least you can play it on 3, and you'd probably rather play it later, so you don't have to do tempo, but you know, it's not a terrible turn 3 play also. Moving on to Darkfallen Neophyte, single blood rune card, 2 mana with 3 mana 2/5. Battlecry, spend 2 corpses to give all minions in your hand +2 attack. okay. This is probably one of those good candidates of a card that you might be kicking yourself for having to play it when you don't actually care. Like, this isn't... Yeah, it's like you might not want to actually spend the corpses on this. It's involuntary, right? If you played a minion, it's spending the corpses if you have the 2 corpses, right? But, yeah, I mean, but otherwise, like, a 3-mana 2/5 is fine. You may want to actually just not have the corpses. Sometimes you just won't have the corpses on curve, and that's not a problem. So, you know, there's that. But, I mean, if you hit a lot of minions with this, I guess it's good too, right? It's just, it could be really weird if you... I wonder if this actually triggers if you don't even have any minions in hand. That could be awkward as well. But overall, I mean, this is probably a fine card. Probably not, you know, it's okay. It's like a kind of okay 3-drop, right? Probably not much better. If anything, I think the effect is... I don't want to say it's like bad. It's probably just as likely to be bad as good though. So, you know. Okay though. Moving on, we have Glacial Advance. This is a 3-mana frost spell. Single frost rune. Deal 4 damage. Your next spell this turn costs 2 less. So 3-mana deal 4. It does go face. So that's significant. That makes it significantly better. Automatically. Also, just imagine you have like 8 of these. Oh god. Oh god, you can actually just... This is literally an OTK on turn 10. You can just play 8 of these. And 32 damage. But anyway, you wouldn't even wait that long. You would just do it on like turn 5 and turn 6, right? But anyway. Yeah, so I mean, it's just very good. It's not the most, like... The only downside, right, is that you just don't always have that many spells. So this might just be 3-mana deal 4. It might not really be worth anything more a decent amount of the time. But, I mean, 3-mana deal 4 is already fine. And sometimes this is effectively 1-mana deal 4, and then it's nuts. So, yeah. Very good card. Only puts you a single frost rune as well, so... Very, very nice. Moving on to Graveyard Shift, 3-mana spell, summon 2 1/1 zombies with Reborn. So because these cards have Reborn, that means they die and come back, and they're all undead, by the way. And so there's a lot of synergy there, potentially. And as well, you will get 4 corpses out of that, because it's 2 minions that die twice. So you get 4 corpses, so that just, you know... That's a pretty early way on turn 3 to ensure that corpses are just not going to be a problem for you anymore. And effectively, I mean, you'd probably, assuming they don't get AoE'd, like you'd rather have 4 1/1s, you know, like 3-mana summon 4 1/1s is also a card in like Warlock, right? Which is, you know, probably better just to have everything immediately, but yeah, it's also nice to just have annoying crap that your opponent just can't deal with this, right? Like, you're gonna get to ping stuff, and it's just very, very annoying. You get to activate all your undead stuff, and yeah. Overall, just very good. There's a Mamba Haiden. It's a very nice card, especially if you want to activate your other corpse stuff. Moving on to Howling Blast, a 3-mana frost spell. Deal 3 damage to an enemy and freeze it. Deal 1 damage to all other enemies. I don't know why Swipe needed a discount and also needed to freeze. It's not quite Swipe damage-wise, because it does the AoE damage does not hit the primary target, so it's only, you know, it's 1 damage less than Swipe, but it also freezes. And yeah, same with Swipe, you know, if you happen to have spell damage, very nice. And yeah, it's just a lot of, it's a blatantly overpowered card. This is, again, one of those cards that just makes you want to have the different rune types available, so you can get some of these really strong single rune cards, if you can help it. But okay, moving on to Meat Grinder. 3-mana 3/4 mech, single unholy rune, battle cry. Shred a random mini in your deck, and to gain 3 corpses. So shred a random legendary is what it means to say. But anyway, yeah, I mean, 3-mana 3/4, of course, is fine. There could be some mech synergy, and, you know, normally, like, destroying a card in your deck doesn't really matter, right? Like, you can just pretend like you would have never drawn it anyway. it'd be really torturous if you happened to be able to like dredge stuff and then you destroyed the thing that you you knew that the card was in the top or something. But like, yeah, normally it should just be upside. So yeah, it's a 3 mana 3/4, gives you a bunch of corpses, which is nice. As Unholy again has a lot of these ways to actually generate corpses, which is good if you have a mixed rune setup to be able to feed all the other things. So that makes it decent, but again, not every deck is going to care too much about that. But I think enough decks will care about it in the early game that if you get that early, it's nice. But moving on to Rhymefang Sword. This is a 3 mana 2/3 weapon, double frost rune. After your hero attacks, reduce the cost of a spell in your hand by 1. So a 3 mana 2/3 weapon is like not really good enough by itself, but if you're getting 3 discounts, effectively it's a 0 mana 2/3 weapon, and a 0 mana 2/3 weapon is very, very good. So yeah, you do just need to have spells, but hopefully you'll have spells, right? You don't always have spells, but hopefully you'll have spells. But overall, yeah, you'll probably be willing to take this for the upside, I think. It does lock you into 2 frost runes, but that's probably the best one to be locked into 2 of if you have to. So it's pretty decent. But yeah, it's a lot weaker than like a 0 mana 2/3 weapon would be, because it's delayed and stuff too. But yeah, it's usually going to be pretty good. Moving on to another weapon, Soulbreaker. This is a single blood rune card. 3 mana 3/2 weapon. So Fire War Axe. After your hero attacks and kills a minion, gain 2 corpses. This is in blood, a way to actually have an engine for some of those corpses. So you potentially get 4 corpses out of this. And obviously a 3 mana 3/2 weapon is totally fine. Very reasonable. So good card, good card. I do think a 3/2 weapon is usually better than a 2/3 weapon, because like 2 damage just doesn't kill a lot, and you know, a 3/2 will kill a lot of things. Sometimes the 2/3 is better, but you know, you know a lot more safely that you'll get value out of this compared to the 2/3. But yeah, very nice. The corpses are upside and it's a firework, so good card, good card. Moving on, Unholy Frenzy, 3 mana spell, single Unholy Rune. Choose an enemy minion. Your minions attack it. Resummon any that die. So Unholy, we just had one earlier. There are ways to get like reborn minions, and just there's a lot of other things you can do with this. You know, get death rattles to go off and come back. Get the reborns. You can actually use the second half of the reborn, and then it comes back with reborn again. So, like, there's just a lot of things you can do with that. You also give your minions rush, potentially. There's just a lot of... Yeah, there's, like, a lot of things you can do with this. So, this seems extremely, extremely good to me. It's a little bit... The downside is that if you're kind of off board, it can be a little bit tricky. But, you know, I don't think it has the same penalty that you would normally associate with some kind of, like, you know, kind of win harder card, because you do have the ability, particularly if you have a lot of the Unholy cards, you're gonna have just like those kind of reborn death rattles. If you don't have any of that kind of stuff, you probably wouldn't value this as highly. But assuming you have some of that stuff, you should be able to like at least get like somewhat fair value out of this. And there's a lot of potential to get more. So I think this is a pretty good card. It's probably, you know, you probably put it around what you put like Riot, because like Riot was one of the other cards that was a lot like this, right? And then that makes it pretty good. But yeah, you do need to be playing kind of an aggressive tempo style for this to be consistent, and you want to have the right synergies. But you probably will have that a decent amount of time. But so it'll depend on your deck. I think the type of deck that you want will be attainable, is kind of what I'm thinking. That it seems pretty good. But yeah. With that, that's too much time for one card. We have to go fast. Let's move on. Ymirjar Deathbringer. 3 mana, 3/3, undead, double Unholy Rune. 3 mana, 3/3 taunt. with a death rattle, spend 3 corpses to summon a 3/3 Risen Emerger with Taunt. The second body does not leave a corpse. So, yeah, the issue is, so I think this thing will be the 3rd corpse. I think I saw a tweet about this, that if this was the 3rd corpse, it will activate itself. I think. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how it works. Because the one thing is that, you know, especially on curve, this is going to be awkward. It's going to be difficult to actually have 3 corpses on turn 3. So this is just a 3 mana 3/3 taunt, and that's not very good. But if you can actually get that, then it's decent, right? At the same time, like, that might not even, it's not the most efficient use of corpses either. So, but if you need to spend corpses, it's pretty good just to be able to use them at all. But yeah, the fact that it's going to be so awkward on curve so often makes me think it's not great, but it's probably okay most of the time, right? You are locked into double Unholy, which means you're going to get forced into a lot of synergies, but it's just like you might not be able to play this on turn 3 active, and then it's just a little weird. But it's probably not terrible, just probably kind of okay, I think. Moving on to Death Strike. This is a 4 mana spell, single blood rune. It's weird that the blood rune cards are not very good in Arena mostly, but then the single blood rune cards are just nuts. This is 4 mana, deals 6 damage to a minion with lifesteal. Like, this is just too much. Like, was this too weak at 5 damage? I'm just like, what? This just seems like it should do 5. Like, why does this do 6? Excuse me, is this really necessary? Obviously, compared to Fireball, Fireball can go face, and this can't, so that's a downside, but otherwise it's the Fireball that heals you. It's like, what? Excuse me? Okay. Very nice. Makes it very hard to, it's just very good, like, defensively. Because that's enough healing that, like, if you're getting tempo down at all, and then you just stabilize at all, like, this just makes you win. But, yeah, just very nice. Has a downside that the lifesteal might not do anything always if you're the one pushing, so that's not great, but, you know, it's a good card. 4 mana. Even an aggressive deck can just use it as an assassinate, basically, so pretty good. Moving on to Grave Strength. 4 mana, shadow spell with triple Unholy Runes. This one, 4 mana, give your minions +1 attack. Spend 5 corpses to give them +3 instead. Okay, well, this is not a card unless you upgrade it, obviously, but if you're going to be triple Unholy, upgrading this shouldn't be the problem. The problem would be actually having a big enough board to make that worth it. But I mean, you know, you use this as Bloodlust, basically, right? It's a 4 mana Bloodlust. It's probably, I mean, honestly, it's probably, you can't really play it on curve probably, but it probably is better than Bloodlust. Just because you're probably, at that point, you're probably not going to care about the corpses. It'd be one weird thing, though, is that if it's your first board, if your opponent's just kind of sitting back doing nothing, you might not have had 5 things die, right? Bloodlust does seem play, but you can Bloodlust, that part that's because you can just Bloodlust lethal somebody on turn 5, right? And it is a permanent buff. But yeah, it's gonna be awkward sometimes. But the thing is I'll add again, like, you know, this is not like the upside you want to lock yourself into triple runes for. So honestly, even though I think this is probably fine, I don't think you want to take this just because you don't want to lock yourself into triple Unholy. Personally, I think you're not going to want to do that. Like, you're not going to want to take something like this just to do that. So I would advise against taking card like this card, personally. But I mean, if you want to go, it could work though. It would be an interesting thing. It would be a fun strategy though. So you could, but if you just want to win, I don't think you want to lock yourself into triple Unholy. But anyway, moving on to Lady Death Whisper. 4 mana, 4/3 undead, triple Frost rune. If you do go triple, Frost is probably the best one to go. But this is 4 mana, 4/3 Death Rattle. Copy all Frost spells in your hand. Even if you are going to be locked into triple Frost, so that you're going to have spells. If you have spells, you're going to have Frost spells, right? But this requires you to, I mean, you don't have to hold them that long because you just have to play them. You just have to hold them until turn 4, right? So it's pretty. That's not hard in that way, right? You'll be really sad if you hold them and then it gets silenced. The problem is that, you know, you're detempoing to play this, and then even on a good day, you're probably getting 2 frost spells out of this. Like, at that point, it's good, right? But, like, 1's probably not worth it. You probably need at least 2, and you're probably just not going to have that often, you're being honest. And, because, like, trying to hold it longer to make it work, if you're going to need to naturally draw them or whatever, it's probably just not going to work very consistently. But, you know, the upside is there. It could work, but it's probably not going to be very consistent. But moving on. Malignant Horror. This is a 4-mana 2/4 undead reborn minion. Does not have a rune associated with it. At the end of your turn, spend 5 corpses to summon a copy of this minion. So this could be one thing where it's awkward that you actually might not want to spend those corpses. Because, I mean, a 2/4 reborn is cool and all, but, like, there's other things that are better to spend 5 corpses on. So that's one thing that could actually be awkward. Having said that, you do get 2 of the corpses back when this, you know, you get 2 from this, and then if you summon another one, then you'll get 2 more. But then if these things keep staying alive, they'll keep resummoning. And that's the thing that's even worse about it, is that if you have, let's say you play this when you have 4 corpses, it doesn't do anything, and then this thing gets killed, but it's reborn. The 2/1 thing is still there, doesn't have reborn anymore, and then it resummons itself, and then you just you spend 5 corpses to get a 2/1. That actually sucks. That's really, really bad. So this thing can, like, non-trivially can be really awkward. Now, is that, like, enough of a reason not to take it? I don't know, man. Like, I mean, a 2/4 reborn honestly also just isn't that good. So you might still have to take this sometimes, but man, honestly, like, it makes me not want to take it. You're obviously, yeah, supposed to hand buff it, and then, you know, that would be the idea. But yeah, it can get really weird. It can get really, really weird. The fact that the reborns involuntarily copy themselves and spend all your corpses, like, it's really awkward, but it's probably still a decent card. But yeah, it's like, you're gonna have to, like, there's gonna be times you just have to not play it because it's just too weird. But you can probably manage it in a game, and sometimes later on you're just not gonna, you'll have a bunch of corpses, you won't really care. Yeah. Just be careful with that one in the mid game. Moving on to Might of Menethil. This is a 4-mana 4/2 frost. 4-mana 4/2 weapon with 2 frost runes associated. Battle cry, spend up to 3 corpses, freeze that many enemy minions. So I assume this won't overspend corpses, right? If your opponent only has 1 minion, it'll only spend 1 corpse, right? So that seems pretty nice. It's a little bit weird because, I mean, obviously it's nice for, the idea of this card would be you freeze your opponent's board and just go face with it. That's in Constructed, that's what you would do. In Arena, it's a little bit weird because when you play a weapon, you generally want to hit minions with it. So you just freeze something that you're probably just going to kill anyway. So, like, sometimes you're just going to be wasting corpses. So that's a little bit weird. If there's multiple minions, at least you freeze both and then you kill one and then the other one's frozen. So that's worth something. But yeah, that's a little bit weird. But yeah, I mean, a 4/2 weapon is fine. Not great, but fine. So, I mean, overall. And later on, if you do get into, you know, if the game's closing out, this thing is kind of nuts because you're going to have the corpses and then you're going to freeze their whole board potentially and then just go face. So this thing gets very good later on. I think it's just a little bit weird in the mid game, but overall, it's still going to make it a pretty good card. So that'll be, yeah, you'll be willing to take this. So moving on. Next card here, Nerubian Swarmguard. 4-mana 1/3 undead with taunt, single unholy rune. 4-mana 1/3 battle cry. taunt Battlecry, summon 2 copies of this minion. So another one that you're supposed to hand buff. Ideally. Honestly though, I mean, 4 mana for 3/1/3s is not bad. It's not great, like you wouldn't want that really, but it's not that bad. It's actually semi-okay. But yeah, you can hand buff these potentially, and then it's really good. But the other thing is that you do get 3 corpses out of this. That's kind of nice, and it's just a lot of taunt. So it's kind of okay. Like, you know, Voidwalker is a totally good one drop, and this is a little expensive, but you get 3 of them. So, you get corpses when any minion dies. Doesn't have to be an undead. So I do think that's kind of I think it's okay. It's not like, obviously if you have the hand buffs, you value it a lot higher. Like you probably just don't value this super high, but I don't think it's terrible. I think it's, yeah. I think it's okay. Moving on to Remorseless Winter. This is a 4 mana frost spell, single frost rune, deal 2 damage to all enemies, draw a card. Just another one of these frost spells that just blatantly power creeps the classic spell back in the day. So yeah, it's consecration and then it also draws a card. Why? I don't know. It hits all minions. Like consecration, it also goes phase. If you have spell damage, it gets kind of out of control. It also recycles itself. So I mean, it's very good. What do you want to say? Moving on. Repulsive Gargantuan. 4 mana 3/6 undead, single frost rune. Enemy characters can't be healed. How relevant is that? Sometimes it is. How much is that really going to matter? Not very often. There is like an AoE. There is a new card which is an AoE neutral heal, which this would deny potentially. But for the most part, I mean, this is just a 4 mana 3/6. There's not much upside to that, you wouldn't think. So a 4 mana 3/6 is good. It will die slowly, which makes it a little. You won't get the corpse, but yeah, I mean, it's a fine 4-drop. Not amazing. You just don't expect much from the effect, but I think it's okay. Moving on to Thessarian. This is a 4 mana, 3/3 undead, reborn. Why are there so many texts on this card? Battlecry and Death Rattle. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy. Why does this do so much? So it's reborn and Death Rattle, which mean this thing, I mean, the result of this is that it just does way more than a card's supposed to do. 4 mana 3/3, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. It's a random enemy, could go phase, could be bad, could be good. But sometimes in Arena, typically you probably wouldn't be happy about that, but when it dies, it does it again, and then it comes back. It does not get a Battlecry. Reborn does not give a Battlecry, but when there's a Death Rattle, it does again. So it's 4 mana 3/3 with Reborn, deals 6 damage, split across 3 random targets. So yeah, it's just it's pretty nuts, because if you think about it, like if your opponent just has like a Chillwind Yeti compared to something else that gets played on turn 4, this thing is going to hit the Yeti eventually, and then it will trade itself into the Yeti. So, and then it's gonna also, it might just kill something else too. Like it just does way too much, even though it's random and it might be a little awkward. It's just, it does too much, so it's very strong, and it gives you 2 corpses as well, and it's only a single frost rune. So very good card, but legendary won't see it very much. Moving on to Tomb Guardians. 4 mana shadow spell, double unholy rune. Summon 2/2/2 zombies with taunt. Spend 4 corpses to give them reborn. So 2/2/2s with taunt is not very good. Really not very good. For 4 mana, it's a little expensive. Giving them reborn, however, makes them very annoying. But it's not actually, you wouldn't think it's really worth 4 corpses, to be honest, necessarily. But having said that, like, you'll get 2 of the corpses back, right? So that lets you it's basically free, because you'll get 4 corpses out of this thing, so it's kind of free at the end of the thing. It's only a temporary consuming of your corpses. So yeah, assuming that you can actually activate this, it's pretty good. But on turn 4, you're not always going to be able to activate this, and if you don't activate it, it's not worth it. So, but active, it's very good. So you're going to want to, like, you are going to be locked into 2 Unholy anyway, so you're probably going to have some ways to engine into some of it. But yeah, you need to activate this for it to really be worth it. So overall, it's probably decent. It's just a little bit awkward because you're not always going to be able to play it on turn 4, but it's usually going to be pretty good. You'll probably pick it decently. But moving on to Army of the Dead. Oh yeah, talking about cards. 5 mana, Shadow Spell, double Unholy Rune. Raise up to 5 corpses as 2/2 Risen Ghouls with Rush. So, yeah, these do not give you the corpses back, unfortunately. But, 5 mana, 10/10 Rush, something like that. Pretty darn good. Again, like on turn 5, like, it's conceivable even without any engines, you might just have enough corpses anyway, if you haven't spent any of them. But yeah, it's just very, very good. Because it's just, getting a bunch of 2/2 rushes. Because that's going to, especially if you can actually play that on turn 5, like, you'll probably clear them and then still have board left. You might just have like a 2/1 and another 2/2 left over or something, right? It's just very, very good. So we will move on. See, the question been asked a couple times. The way the runes work is the same way it works constructed. Once you pick, you'll be offered anything, and then once you pick cards with a certain rune, it locks you into the rune, but otherwise you're but yeah, otherwise it's just, and that'll lock you in for the rest of the drafts. You won't be offered anything else. Moving on, Blood Boil, 5 mana, Shadow Spell with Lifesteal. Infect all enemy minions. At the end of your turns, they take 2 damage. So for example, the turn you play this is like a, doesn't hit face, but it's like a Consecration. Because at the end of the turn, all their stuff will take damage. And then you also get healed. So if you hit 5 minions, you get healed for 10 immediately. And if any of their stuff lives and continues to live through their next turn, you'll get more healing and more of the damage dealt to it, right? Very, very strong. Yeah, it's obviously, like, the pure immediate tempo of this is a little bit slow, but getting all that healing and stuff just makes it very, should make it more than worth it. And if you are actually playing Blood, like, this is a card you're definitely going to massively want. But, yeah. Makes it, pretty good. Yeah, it's only at the end of your turn, so like it doesn't work at the end of your opponent's turn. But if their minion doesn't die on their turn, then you can wait until the end of your turn and then let it finish them off, hopefully. But yeah, it's very good. Moving on, next one is Corpse Bride. 5 mana, 4/4 undead, battle cry. Spend up to 8 corpses. Summon a risen groom with stats equal to the amount spent. So yeah, this is a guy that doesn't leave a corpse, but yeah. Obviously, getting a 5 mana 4/4 plus 8/8 is just good luck in the next game, opponent. With 1 additional loss, hope you're not 2 losses. But the only thing is that, I mean, getting 8 corpses on turn 5 is not easy. This is not attached to any runes, by the way. So like it's only really Blood and Unholy that actually have ways to generate corpses as well. So like if you're Frost, for example, like you can't really do this. Like this isn't going to work very well. But I mean, having said that, you only really need like 2 or 3 corpses for this to be like a decent tempo play, right? So, and the upside is there if you happen to have a bunch of corpses early, if you have some of those cards to generate them very early on. And a lot of those cards are like 3 or 4 mana cards, the ways to actually create a lot of them, then it's very, very good. So Yeah, it'll depend a bit on your deck, but this will be one of those things you get absolutely memed by and lose the game to immediately. Because by the time you get 5 or 6, if you can just get 5 or 6, you probably win the game off of this. So it's a real threat, but would not be as good without at least some level of direct synergy for it. Moving on to Corpse Explosion, 5 mana shadow spell. Double blood rune. Detonate a corpse to deal 1 damage to all minions. If any are still alive, repeat this. So assuming you're actually able to generate a bunch of corpses, very nice to just be able to clear a board. The only one thing that could be weird is if your opponent just happens to have, I don't know, like a 2/12 on their board or something. You might not want to actually spend 12 corpses to kill it, right? But I don't know how often that would ever actually happen. But generally speaking, it's going to be very expensive on your corpses. And the issue would be, especially in an arena, like if you don't have good ways to generate, you might just not have enough corpses to like full clear a board in the mid game. But later on, you should, because you probably won't be able to spend enough, and then you'll at least get them from hero powers, right, if nothing else. So that'll be decent. But yeah, it's a 2-sided board clear, so it has the downside of other things. But yeah, it's a 2-sided board clear, so if you want 2-sided board clears, you'll take this. If you're trying to be aggressive, which you're probably not if you're going into blood, you probably are trying to play control at that point, so you probably are just going to want this. It's going to be one of those things that actually just not being able to be guaranteed to drop this is going to... part of the reason why the whole blood control strategy might not work very well. But if you are going blood, you're probably going to want this. So, yeah. Moving on to Deathbringer Sourfang. 5 mana 3/5 undead, taunt, double blood rune again. Death Rattle, return this to your hand. It costs health instead of mana. So it's a little bit weird. 5 mana 3/5 taunt, not good enough, right? But it comes back to your hand, but then you have to spend 5 life, and then it's free, so you just get to play it again. The weird thing is that it's a taunt, which it just means it's annoying, right? Your opponent can't ignore it. But like, since it costs you health, like it's not really protecting you. It's not really taunting in the sense, because you have to pay the health. And since you're not in constructed, you're not going to have like all the tools to like give you an infinite amount of health, right? So like, this thing is a little bit weird in that way. But ideally, you're just trying to win on tempo, and then getting this thing for free like 1 or 2 times is just is all you want, right? Because eventually you're just going to have to not play it anymore. But with that, like, as long as you're able to protect your life, you'll get to play this at least 1 or 2 times, and then you'll be good. So it seems pretty good in that way, but yeah, you just don't expect it to go infinitely. You just only get a couple of them, right? But that'll be that. Moving on to Possessive Fire, 5 mana 3/3 Battle Cry. Single Unholy Rune. Summon 2 1/1 fighters with Rush and Reborn. So this is one of those ways to generate a whole bunch of corpses as well. And this is very cool because, the Reborns, when they come back, they die, they come back at 1 health. They already had 1 health, so they just, you get to rush 4 times the turn that you play this. It's very, very good. And also, it's annoying if you don't have to use them, they can stick around as well. They'll still be annoying. And if you want corpses, you can get all the corpses as well. You get 5 total corpses out of this card, and you get 4 of them immediately as well, if you can actually use them. Although you've already spent 5 of your mana, so you probably can't do it that turn, but at least on the next turn they're going to work. But yeah, it's just very, very nice, because 5 mana deal 4 spread however you want with a 3/3. Just good. Not crazy good, but just good. Moving on to Rhyme Sculptor, 5 mana 3/3 undead, single frost rune. Battle Cry. Summon 2/2/1 Rhyme Elementals with Death Rattle. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy. So, yeah, these are the Rhyme Elementals. So, it's interesting. How much is this in terms of stats? I mean, total stats, that's like a 5 mana 7/5, right? But it's not as good as that would be. But you get multiple corpses. You have an undead with this. Some decent synergies there. Death Rattle synergies, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, overall seems fine. Doesn't seem crazy good. But yeah, it's fine. Deal 2 damage to random enemies. I mean, we know how good the skeletons are, right? So they're almost as good. They're a bit weaker than skeletons because they get pinged off, weaker to AoE. This whole thing gets killed by the new swipe, right, from other Death Knights. So it's a little weak to AoE, but overall, it's not like super bad, right? It's fine. It's okay. So I think it's all right. I think it's decent. Moving on, we have Corrupted Ashbringer, a 6 mana 5/2 lifesteal weapon, double blood rune. So if you just go face, is a 20 health swing. So that's a lot of health, right? As far as board control is concerned, a 5/2 weapon for 6 is expensive, right? It's technically still 10 damage for 6 mana, but it's not amazing tempo. But the thing is that the only reason you say that is because normally it costs you health, but since it's lifesteal, it doesn't really cost you health, right? It's probably going to heal you. A lot of times it's going to heal you more than it actually costs you, so it's pretty nice in that way. So overall, I mean, probably makes it pretty good, right? It can be a Pyroblast over 2 if you want it to be. It can heal you a bunch. It does a lot of things. It seems, fine. Pretty good. One of the bigger downsides of it is that it locks you into double blood rune, which I don't think is very good, because you don't get many better blood rune cards than this. So beyond 1. But yeah, I mean, it seems decent. Moving on to Gnome Muncher. 6 mana 5/6 undead, taunt, and lifesteal. Single blood rune card. So that makes it reasonable to pick. At the end of your turn, attack the lowest health enemy. So that does say enemy, which does mean it can go face if your opponent's lowest health enemy is the enemy hero, then they're probably dead. Is what that means, right? So that could be a way to finish off a game. So this thing actually is sometimes reach. Not always, but sometimes. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, it has taunt and lifesteal, so it's very annoying, very good to keep you alive. And also, yeah, unplayable when your opponent has a Basilisk on board, that is true. But, yeah, overall, the only thing is that it's a little bit understated, but, you're picking this because you want to just have a bunch of lifesteal, right? Because the ability just, in theory, right, guarantees that you'll always get the lifesteal, even if your opponent has a removal for it, at least you get some of the lifesteal, right? And they have to use their removal on this to deny you the other lifesteal, so that's the purpose of it, is to just get a bunch of healing. But, and it's pretty good for that, but it wouldn't be nearly as valuable in a deck where you just don't care as much about that, but it's not going to be terrible in any deck, right? Just a lot better in decks where you really want to just live. Moving on to Marrow Manipulator. This is a 6 mana triple Frost Rune card. 6 mana 5/5 Battle Cry. Spend up to 5 corpses. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy for each. So, Pyroblast my opponent every time. We did it, chat. Nice. But anyway, it seems like a pretty good way to spend corpses. Actually, a lot stronger than a lot of the other ones. A lot of the other ways. Even though damage can get wasted, right? You'd be pretty happy to just spend 5 corpses, and assuming that it doesn't just like leave everything at 2 health or whatever, assuming it doesn't completely screw you, it should be good. Right, yeah, you can get memed by it, but it should be good most of the time. So, I think, It's pretty good in that way. But yeah. And by turn 6, you should have the corpses unless you spent them on something else, so it's pretty nice. And yeah, you're getting a 5/5 with that. Like, honestly, like, this one, it probably wouldn't be worth 6 mana, but I mean, just the Battle Cry would almost be worth 6 mana, right? Like, probably not quite, but... and you're just getting a 5/5, so like, it's very good. Moving on to Overseer Frigidara. 6 mana, 5/6, Battle Cry. Draw 2 spells. If they're both frost spells, deal 2 damage to all enemies. It is double frost rune, but, you know, this could be very... well, this could be very weird in the fact that it's not very likely you can actually activate that, right? But, so, because it's very nice if you can activate that, get a free consecration. Having said that, though, I mean, 6 mana, 5/6, draw 2 spells is already really good. Like, so even if you can, like, assuming you actually have 2 spells to draw, you're not detemplating much and you're getting 2 card draws for almost free. So that just makes it really good anyway. There is a possibility, since if you're going down the frost, mostly down the frost thing at least you might have a chance. But yeah, it's fine if you just don't activate it. But if you do activate it, you probably win. Yeah, I think you would need to have 2. I don't think it would activate if you only drew 1 frost spell. I don't think that would work. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But yeah, like, you're just getting... it's a lot of value just drawing, so... So, moving on. Alexandros Mograine. Triple blood spell. 7 mana, 7/7. Battle Cry. For the rest of the game, deal 3 damage to your opponent at the end of your turns. So, you brewmaster this a bunch of times. You get to the point you're dealing 9 damage per turn to your opponent, but then your hero explodes because you brewmastered a 7 mana 7/7 3 times. But you know, it's an inevitability thing. I don't think this is like great, but I mean, you know, if you are in a stalled out game, this wins you the game automatically, right? So that does happen sometimes. Most games in Arena are not typically like that though, but yeah, like, I mean, you can just play this. It's not much of a... paying a 7 mana 7/7 is a tempo penalty, but not by that much, assuming it doesn't get removed too easily. But yeah, I mean, it's decent inevitability though. Just doesn't seem... there's better thing... like, what I'm trying to say is there's just better things to do in Arena, but, you know, this is worth something, so it's decent, right? It's much better. It's significantly... I think it is a bit better than the 7 mana 7/7. The effect is worth something, but it's just not great. But it's decent. Again, like, kind of the problem is that you have to lock yourself into triple blood rune, which, as I've said a million times, is not very good. So it's probably not worth it for that reason. It's gonna be painful, honestly, if you get forced into a legendary choice, which is this and 2 crap legendaries really early, and then you just have to go triple blood rune. Then you can try to make it work, I guess, but yeah, for that reason, it's a little bit awkward. Moving on, we have Frostmourne. Same Frostmourne that came from the Lich King card from early Hearthstone as well. 7 mana 5/3. Weapon, Death Rattle, summon every minion killed by this weapon. So it can be 7 mana, deal 15 to your opponent over 3 turns, which, you know, can be very good. It can also just be the best board control swing ever over 3 turns. The one thing that's a little bit weird about this is that ideally you actually would want to have more weapons with this. Although it's a little bit weird because you might run out of health then. But what you might want to do is actually have another weapon to overwrite this after your second swing, so that you can get the minions earlier, so you just win the board faster. Because that's what you might want to do. But yeah, it's a very, very powerful weapon. It's just that, you know, you need a lot of health to be able to comfortably use this, right? This has no runes attached to it, so you can play it in any Death Knight deck potentially. But yeah, it's just... to actually get the full value to that, you need to have a lot of health. So that's a little bit weird, but it's a very, very powerful win condition card. So there it is. Moving on to Frostworm's Fury, 7 mana, triple Frost Rune, Frost Spell. Deal 5 damage, freeze all enemy minions, summon a 5/5 Frostworm. Why does it do all of this? Why did they just give Frost Nova to a Firelands portal? Why is this a thing? Why? This is one of the reasons that, like, discovering if you can get 2 Frost runes and then anything that discovers Frost is really good. Because of this card, basically. But yeah, this is also an undead, and yeah, it's just, this is, it's an epic, so you just won't see it that much, but yeah, it's just, it does way too much, right? It's just very, very good, so, very good card. It's probably one of the things where, if you get this early, I mean, I don't think it's ideal to go triple rune in general, but for this, you'll do it, right? So, yeah. Epic card. Talking about things you don't need triple rune for, though, Patchwork. 7 mana, 4/6, undead, legendary. Single blood rune, Valkyrie. Destroy a random minion in your opponent's hand, deck, and battlefield. So, it casts Deadly Shot. Basically, imagine it's a 4 mana, 4/6 already good, but then for 3 mana you get a Deadly Shot, and then for pure upside you get to remove a card from their hand, assuming they have a minion. And you get to remove a minion from their deck, which doesn't really matter, to be honest, but like, you get to remove a card from their hand, which is just really nice too. The only awkward thing about this is that, you know, if you can't actually clear their board enough to guarantee you hit what you want, it might not, you know, exactly be a good tempo play if it misses. And then it's not really worth it, but assuming you're playing on board decently, you can control where this goes on board, and then this is just like, it does way too much, right? It's just very, very good. This gets you ahead in value as well as tempo, so it's just very nice. So, how many more do we have? A few more. Okay, with that, we move on to Bone Guard Commander. This is another single blood rune card, 8 mana, 8/8, undead, taunt, battle cry. Raise up to 6 corpses as 1/2 risen footmen with taunt. So these do not leave a corpse yet again. So it's an 8 mana 8/8 with taunt, so it's just, I mean, that's just a lot of taunt. Very vulnerable to removal, but it gives you all these other things that, you know, don't just die to a single removal. So keep you alive, theoretically, right? The only issue is that, I mean, it's vulnerable to removal in 2 different ways, right? Because it's very vulnerable. The main body is very vulnerable, but then all the stuff it summons is also vulnerable to AoE. So, kind of vulnerable to losing some of its value. And if they have both removals, you kind of, well, at that point you're actually getting decent value, I guess. But yeah, you're getting basically a bunch of Risen Goldshire footmen. It's pretty funny, actually. So, I mean, overall, like, by that point in the game, I think, like, you're just gonna have corpses, right? Like, by 8 mana, so you're not gonna mind spending them like this, so you're getting a lot of stats for 8 mana. So, overall, I mean, it does seem just good, right? It's a rare example where it's like it's a late game arena card that doesn't seem like super busted, but it does something, right? So, can appreciate that, I guess. So, it's only a single blood rune, so you don't have to worry about that as well. Moving on to Lord Marrowgar. 8 mana 9/7 undead. Triple unholy rune. So a card you're almost never going to see. But Battlecry, raise all your corpses as 1/1 risen golems with rush. For each one that can't hit, give 1 +2/+2. So, you know, this is kind of a constructed card. But if you're going triple unholy, you're going to have ways to generate corpses, and just generally, you know, playing neutral minions in arena, you get corpses from anything, so you will always be able to spend, you'll always have like some corpses unless you spent them all somehow, so you'll get pretty good value out of this. You'll probably, I don't know, like, if there's a good chance you have like 10-15 corpses on turn 8 even. Like, it's very possible I think in an unholy deck. You probably don't usually have that many, but like later on, I mean, you will. And yeah, then you're getting like, I mean, you're getting just an absurd amount of stats, right? If you just summon 10 corpses with this, And if like you might also have other minions on the board, right? So then you get more value. Then you're getting something like you're getting like 15 of summons out of this just off of like 10 corpses. Like, it's just it's really good. I don't think there's a cap. There might be a cap at 99 or something for corpses. I've seen people have like 40. I don't think there is. It might be 99 though, but like you're never gonna hit that anyway. Well, maybe you will. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this is just like, I think you just have the condition. Like, there's just no. This will just be really good, right? Like, it's not like you have to specifically build around it exactly. So yeah, it's very good. Moving on to Soul Stealer. This is the one really good the one really good high rune blood rune card. 8 mana 5/5 undead minion, Battle Cry. Destroy all minions. Gain 1 corpse for each enemy destroyed. So yeah, it's a Twisting Nether that summons a 5/5 and also gives you corpses to activate your other thing. So very, very good. Again, has the downside. This is probably the one thing where it's like, you don't really want to go triple blood, but I mean, you'll do it for this, right? Because it's just worth it. Because this card's just nuts. But yeah, Twisting Nether is not very good because it, doesn't leave you with a board, but this leaves you with a 5/5, so very good. Oh yeah, this card. Moving on to the Scourge. 9 mana, double Unholy Rune, Shadow Spell. Fill your board with random undead. I don't know if someone's actually done like the math on like how much you actually get on average with the actual rotation, but like undead minions are good. Like, they're good usually. That's why I'm saying like I'm not sure about the old ones, but like there's a lot of good undead minions. So, and a lot of them are big, and some of them have like Reborn and Death Rattles and things. So like this is a lot. This just like, I want to say this gives you a 15 or 20 mana board on average. It might even be more. It might be more. It's very good. But yeah. So this is it's a legendary spell, but there are ways. If you have double Unholy, you can discover this. So you will see this discovered sometimes, and it might get randomly generated somehow. But yeah, it's very, very good. And with that, we move on to the last card here, which is Stitched Giant. This is a 10 mana 8/8 undead, double Unholy as well. Costs 1 less for each corpse you've spent this game. So you do need to actually be able to spend corpses, which conceivably might be a problem. You might not always have like a bunch of ways to actually spend corpses. So this could be awkward. But yeah, assuming you can, like, I mean, if you can at least spend 3 or 4 corpses, then this is fine. But yeah, like there is a real risk that you just don't actually have the ability to spend corpses, I think. So that could be a real problem. But so it's going to be a little deck dependent. In theory, it should be good, right? But again, like, because you can probably activate it around turn 6, turn 7, most likely. It might just be a thing where unless you already have all the setup, you just don't take it because the risk just isn't worth it. Probably. But it's a lot of decks should be able to make it work. It's not guaranteed. But with that, yeah, that is it for this review. That took a bit longer than I wanted to. We're already at like 90 minutes. I'll end up by just mentioning again, since some people weren't here in the beginning. The way the rune system works is basically you're allowed to have a total of 3 runes. So if you pick and whenever you pick a rune card in Arena, that's going to lock in your deck. So that's why I've been mentioning all these times that like you might not want to lock yourself into triple blood, because a lot of the triple blood cards are weird constructed-ish cards that don't really work in Arena very well. And there's a lot of very good single rune cards, so it's very good to have a split of them. And so that's just how it works. And the draft will offer you whatever, but as soon as you pick cards with certain runes, it locks you in. So if you pick a triple rune card, you're locked in. If you pick a double rune card, you're locked into 2, and you'll still have flexible flexibility for the third one. And yeah, in general, so like my general thoughts is that you're going to want to spread out your runes as much as possible. It's going to be, I don't think you want to get more than one. It's good to get one blood rune, but not good to get more than one, I think. And Frost and Unholy are okay to have 2 of, I think, because there's a lot of good 2 cost ones that gives you a lot of the discovers. I think ideally, I think the best combination might be like 2 Frost, 1 blood, 2 Frost, 1 Unholy, or just like 1/1/1, and like 2 Unholy, 1 Frost or something would also be okay, or 2 Unholy, 1 blood. Like anything like that is fine. But yeah, we'll see though, because you know, again, like if you get locked into if you get really fast locked into a triple, it would be interesting, right? So that would be a cool way to play. But yeah, I think specifically like triple blood and probably even triple Unholy wouldn't work super well. But I mean, for example, if you get Marrowgar on pick 1, like 100% you take, you would take that, right? Like then you do it, you go for it. But you know, triple blood doesn't necessarily feel worth it, especially. And even triple Frost, I feel like isn't probably worth it. But it wouldn't be, you know, if you get Frostwind's Fury, for example, you might be willing to take it. But yeah, that is it for our review of Death Knight. Hope you guys enjoyed here on Twitch. Hope you guys enjoyed as well on YouTube. Thanks a lot for hanging out, everyone. We will see you guys in the next one. We'll be doing a card review of the whole set right now. I don't actually know if we're doing it right now. I might have to end the stream right now. But we'll say goodbye to YouTube. Bye-bye, YouTube. Bye-bye.